we have authors and different experts come on and talk about their fields. And today I'm super excited to have Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. He is a pastor, speaker, and author, best known for Love and Respect, a best-selling marriage book built around the idea that many marriages get trapped in destructive cycles when wives feel unloved and husbands feel disrespected. He spent decades teaching on marriage, family, relationships, and practical ways couples can communicate with greater understanding and grace. Super excited to have you here, Dr. Eggerichs. Emerson, if I may, thanks for coming
Yes.
on and spending some time with me. So for people who don't know, like maybe more about your story, I'd love for you to let them know like you are. I gave a little bio there, but who you are and what got you into this place of learning about love and respect and light bulb moments and these like things. Give them a little context.
Well, I pastored for many years in East Lansing, Michigan, which is the place where Michigan State University is located. The Spartans are there. And so from 1980 basically to 1999, I pastored Trinity Church, and the leadership wanted me to exposit Scripture. They wanted me to study the Bible 30 hours a week. They wanted me to get my PhD at Michigan State, which I did in family studies. So it was just a great almost 2 decades there. And while I was looking at Ephesians 5, many consider that the greatest treatise in the New Testament on marriage, I came across that summary statement in Ephesians 5:33, where Paul kind of brings it to a conclusion, and he says, husbands, love your wives, and there was no debate about that in the culture, and wives, respect your husbands. You came across so unloving to me from the topic of budgeting. How can you talk to me so unlovingly? And, well, you're dissing me, woman. No one talks to me this way. I'm sick and tired.
Well, hey there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Faith Roundtable. I'm Josh Burtram. I am your host here. I'm also the pastor of River City Underground. Go check that out at rivercityunderground.com. And also, the Faithful Politics podcast happens right here on the same channel. I'm the faithful co-host there, where we talk about all things happening with politics in Christianity in America and beyond. But here on the Faith Roundtable, we focus specifically on Christian trends in America, what's going on, and not just in the political realm, but all over. And we have authors and different experts come on and talk about their fields. And today I'm super excited to have Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. He is a pastor, speaker, and author, best known for Love and Respect, a best-selling marriage book built around the idea that many marriages get trapped in destructive cycles when wives feel unloved and husbands feel disrespected. He spent decades teaching on marriage, family, relationships, and practical ways couples can communicate with greater understanding and grace. Super excited to have you here, Dr. Eggerichs. Emerson, if I may, thanks for coming
Yes.
on and spending some time with me.
Thanks, Josh. No, thank you for the introduction, and looking forward to our dialogue together on this exciting topic of the new book, Lightbulb Moments in particular, but also the Love and Respect book as well.
Absolutely. So for people who don't know, like maybe more about your story, I'd love for you to let them know, like who you are. I gave a little bio there, but who you are and what got you into this place of learning about love and respect and light bulb moments and these like things. Give them a little context.
Well, I pastored for many years in East Lansing, Michigan, which is the uh, place where Michigan State University is located. The Spartans are there. And so from 1980 basically to 1999, I pastored Trinity Church, and the leadership wanted me to exposit Scripture. They wanted me to study the Bible 30 hours a week. They wanted me to get my PhD at Michigan State, which I did in family studies. So it was just a great almost 2 decades there. And while I was looking at Ephesians 5, many consider that the greatest treatise in the New Testament on marriage, I came across that summary statement in Ephesians 5:33, where Paul kind of brings it to a conclusion, and he says, husbands, love your wives. And there was no debate about that in the culture. And wives, respect your husbands. Now that I knew wasn't going to necessarily sell. Women will say, well, he hasn't earned it. He doesn't deserve it. He's not superior to me. And you show respect to your superiors. I'm not inferior to him. I'm not going to be treated like a doormat. I'm not going to subscribe to what I think is your hidden agenda here, and that's return to patriarchy. I'm not going to give
Right.
him license to do whatever he wants to do and just be this dutiful wife who's nothing more than a doormat. I'm not going to set the feminist team back 50 years or subject myself to emotional abuse. But other than these things, I'm really open to hearing what you have to say about this, Dr. Emerson. So I knew we were up against something, and I'd gone to military
Yes.
school from age 13 to 18 because of family problems. We were not Christ followers. We didn't know the Lord. And so I was at a military school, planned on going to West Point, met with my congressman. The president of the academy can also make recommendations. And I came to Christ through a Billy Graham film called For Pete's Sake when I was 16. And so my worldview kind of changed, and I went to Wheaton because Billy went there, and so I applied. But also, I realized men serve and die for honor. We are affected deeply by issues of honor. Several years ago, Pat Riley had me come spend about 10 hours with him privately. He's the president of Miami Heat, and he and Coach Spo, and we met, and I didn't even talk to the team. In fact, he said, "You're the first person I've ever asked to speak to a team." But this icon, I sat in his presence and we talked about issues that men are motivated by honor. Men will die for honor, and if you dishonor them, and he knew this so well, there will be mutiny. They'll throw you over ship or they'll jump ship. But when you honor a man deep within, he'll serve and die. He'll give his very life for you. In fact, I asked Coach Spo as well as Pat, do you want to be honored? Do you want to receive honors? Or do you want to be honorable? Well, immediately, they both said, we want to be honorable. This is deep within our soul. But with the feminist
Yes, it
movement and
really
other things,
is.
we've missed this motivation. We think men are narcissistic and egotistical. So I think Paul understood something here. And as I unpacked that, I realized it was a huge disconnect. But I began to really work hard at this. And one of the things that I said, and then you can take and ask some questions based on this, I saw a correlation between love and respect in this particular passage, that without love, I saw that Sarah, we've been married over 50 years, will negatively react to me. Her default isn't positive. And, but it ends up coming across to me as disrespectful. That's not her intent, but that's how it sounds and appears to me. No one talks to me at times the way she does. And so I filter through my blue grid, my blue sunglasses, blue hearing aids, that it's disrespect. And when she feels unloved, she reacts that way. When I feel disrespected, 85% of those who withdraw and stonewall is the male. And that shouts, I don't love you to a woman. She can't imagine disconnecting like that. So it put us on what I now refer to as the crazy cycle. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, he reacts without love. And this baby triggers itself and people spin on it. And I like to ask couples, hey, when you see the spirit of your spouse deflate, my prediction is you're on the crazy cycle. And I think that the issue is no longer the issue. This is now the issue. The real issue that got you triggered here still needs to be addressed. But I predict you're going to have to go deeper because she's going to give voice. You came across so unloving to me, apart from the topic of budgeting. How can you talk to me so unlovingly? And, well, you're dissing me, woman. No one talks to me this way. I'm sick and tired. And so the crazy
And the
cycle
cycle
continues.
just goes and
Yeah,
goes and goes.
that's the backstory. Is that enough? I think that gives you an
I
over.
love it. I mean, it's just I could just keep listening. Honestly, I'm like, man, this is so interesting, and I want to get into the light bulb moments because I know that you're building off of your previous work, your decades of experience here, and bringing out these moments. But I would love before we move into that, I would love for you to kind of help us understand what honor is, right? Because honor is something that is spoken, we talk about it, and you just were mentioning it and how important it is, but I think sometimes we don't understand what that is on a psychological level, why it's important, and even like what what was honor in this context, right, in Ephesians, and then how is honor showing up today?
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
in men's lives. And I see it like the examples of the fighting and feeling disrespected, and even the need for advancement even. But what is what is honor? Why is it so important for men?
Right. No, it's an excellent question, and that is the question on the table, and certainly we can see the perversion of that. Honor killings, isn't it interesting? They call it honor killings in Islam. The honor killings. So it can definitely be perverted. A father kills his daughter because she's
Yes.
dating a non-Muslim. I mean, we are all
Right.
cognizant of that, and no, I don't think anybody debates that. But is that honor? There are certain systems that would say that's honor. We, as Christ followers, would say that's not a definition of honor. So, there is a difference between performance. I talk about, even in the psychological realm, it's called unconditional positive regard toward the spirit of a male. So if a wife
Mm,
says, I don't even know what respect is, I said, well, do you know what disrespect is? Oh, yeah, I got that down. I know, I know. I said, yeah. So, I mean, we all
right.
know how to be unloving and disrespectful. I mean, we kind of know that. But what is the proactive positive dimension? And part of the definition of respect is unconditional positive regard toward the spirit of your husband while you're addressing and confronting issues that are not loving, that are not respectable. And so oftentimes we think I've got to be contemptuous to motivate my husband to be loving, but you can't use unholy means to achieve a worthy end any more than a man can say, I'm not going to love you, woman, until you start respecting me. You can't use unholy means to achieve a worthy end. But there is a thing that I just did the other day on our boys, that we're missing our sons, and we don't understand at the core of masculinity is this longing to be a man of honor. And even our movies, whether it's Braveheart, whether it's Saving Private Ryan, whether it's The Gladiator, strength and honor. And why do men tear up in these situations? Because it isn't about receiving admiration or praise. It's about doing acts that are honorable, whether anybody praises you or not. And the heroes of these great movies are applauded by their men because they will do the honorable thing, even if it doesn't result in any credit to them personally. There's something deep that's there. But I also say it's not based on performance, it's rooted in character. And when we talk to our boys, it's a matter of appealing to that. Son, you're becoming a man of honor. You're an honorable young man, but for the life of me, I don't understand how it is that you didn't pick up what I asked you to pick up in your bedroom. Help me make the connection
Hmm.
here. Yeah, I know you would literally die for me if someone came in. A mother could say this to her, but help me understand. You're becoming an honorable man. Using that kind of vocabulary, and I wrote a book called Mother and Son, coaching women on this, and watch what happens. The spirit of the son will soften. He will look at her, and usually he's motivated. But now you can't use it to manipulate him because he'll figure that out real quick. But if it's genuinely stated over a consistent period of time, something happens in the spirit of a boy. And the same thing happens in men. I say, if you look at how great men lead other men, they'll confront them like a coach. They will, I can't believe you made that. You're the best ball player I've ever had. Where was your head at? In fact, if you're not on my team, we'll lose. You're the greatest kid ever, but where was your head at? See all the deposits of honor, then withdrawal. Deposits of honor, then withdrawal. And it is something that many women fail to understand. They don't understand the importance of giving the deposits of respect. They'll give the deposits of love. I love you so much. I love you so much. He knows that. I know you love me, but I don't think you like me. And there's a difference.
Huh.
And we also say we love our teenage son who's rebelling, but we don't respect what's going on. We respect our boss, but we don't love our boss. These are not synonymous. And so it's important to understand how to communicate that idea in a way that really goes deep. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'll stop
No,
there.
I love that. No, that's really good. And it's just so important. Like when we're thinking about the idea of honor, right? And how it was even treated in the ancient world, and how people like it, there this over doing that happened, this excess that happened with honor. Even like they felt like it wasn't even it was like a zero sum game. If you gained honor, that means someone else lost honor. And it's like there's a sense in which, where does that come from? Where is that need that we have to make sure that we are valuable and respected as men? And it's like something that I feel like triggered, right? When something happens with my wife or I feel disrespected, that definitely is like a time when I feel really, really, really upset. Like it takes me to levels that probably other things don't. And, I guess sometimes is it a cultural thing, or how much is culture? How much is like this is just kind of built in to me as like just a guy
Hmm.
that I'm going to need this? And, is it that women don't need respect and men don't need love? I guess. And then we'll move on to your question, like the 12 light bulb moments, start working through those. But like, I would love for you to help our audience, like, understand what is the like men need respect, but how much do they need love? How much do women need respect? How much do women versus love? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of those are great questions. And um, I take the position that we all need love and respect equally. There's no question that it is a need that both of us have. She needs RESPECT. He needs LOVE. There isn't any debate about that. But I do take the position that the felt need for love and respect seems to differ. I've asked 7,000 people this question. When
Hmm.
you're in a conflict with your spouse, are you more likely to feel disrespected during that time or more likely to feel unloved during that time based on the Ephesians 5:33 passage? 83% of the men, Josh, said they feel disrespected.
That tracks.
72% of the women say they feel unloved. That's statistically significant. That is as different as night is from day, as pink is from blue. That is statistically significant. That's off the chart significant. Now, but it illustrates that it's not 100% on either end of the spectrum. But women need to be
Absolutely.
respected and long for that at times, and men need the LOVE. So we're addressing the felt need in that regard. So when you begin to unpack this, the question is, where is this from? Is it the nurture nature debate? It's going to be both. There is a cultural, sociological, a tribal group in the middle of the jungle are going to have issues of honor and respect that differ than, what's going on in New Mexico. I mean, so there are there needs to be an appreciation for that. But I do believe that there's a core issue here. And we have to understand that just like the way you love a woman can vary in different cultures, it just does. There's expressions of love just differ. But the longing of that woman in all cultures to be loved is there. And in fact, I saw some missionaries or anthropologists made a breakthrough into a particular tribe that had not been contacted, and they learned a language. And they asked this one woman what she longed for, what she wanted from her husband. And she used, in their language, she used the word love. She wants love. And that's like Leah, now my husband will love me. Now my husband will love me. This has been true down through the centuries. And certainly, though women need respect, there's not one movie that ends with the hero embracing the damsel and says, I want to respect you, woman, the rest of my life. No movie ends with that statement, I want to respect you, woman. It's always, I want to love you the rest of my life. And there's no Hallmark card from a husband. They know RESPECT, and they tried to sell cards that a husband would buy saying, I really respect you, babe. Those cards don't sell. The women don't want that. And so we have to be sensitive to the felt need and understand that and respect that in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. So the new book. Let's move on to that. I'd love to talk about that with you. The 12 light bulb moments. So, what is a light bulb moment, and kind of what makes that different from maybe your ordinary marriage advice that you might get from someone?
Right. Well, people wrote me over the last 25 years. We had a light bulb moment as a result of reading Love and Respect, your book on marriage, or they would come to our 2-day conference for many years. Focus on the Family sponsored us. We had 1,800 on average coming for Friday night, Saturday. And we had a great run there for over a decade. I'm not pushing that as much now, but we just enjoyed that thoroughly. But during the book signing line, people would say we had a light bulb moment. And what did they mean by that? It's like you can have this marriage of 10 years, for instance, uh, he shuts down, he withdraws during conflict. And in her world, that is unloving. completely unloving. She can't imagine. In fact, the University of Washington studied 2,000 couples for 20 years. And they actually said, we now know the two key ingredients for successful marriages, love and respect. And the Apostle Paul said that 2,000 years ago. But one of the things they recognized, they had these couples in these love laboratories, and they would monitor them, videotape them, and they had linguists. They had them, heartbeats per minute were being measured. I mean, this was intense. And they noticed during marital conflict, eventually, if it got heated, 85% of those who withdrew in Stonewall was the male. I mean, that's statistically significant off the charts. And so
Absolutely.
they asked the women, hey, how do you feel about that? Well, the response was so consistent, Josh, that they made it a descriptor. But what the women said, it feels like an act of hostility. He hates me. He doesn't love me. And the women would say they could not imagine shutting down over what they perceived at worst to be a minor criticism.
Hmm.
So from her standpoint, it just completely baffled. Why does he hate me so much? You know, I know all my research, because of that 85 beats per minute, they knew he was in warrior mode. 85% withdrew, but 99 beats per minute was where the heart was going. They were monitoring. That's warrior mode, and he has to calm himself down because it's going to get escalated out of control. Men are lethal. We can turn violent. So we have to have certain self-regulation where we just disengage, whereas a woman can look like she's out of control and be violent. You just say, I'm sorry, honey, will you forgive me? Oh, that's so sweet. Immediately, because her heartbeats are normal. She can look like she's a flamethrower, verbal flamethrower, but she's relatively calm within because she knows exactly where she wants us to go. Doesn't appear that way. And he can appear stoic, but be in warrior mode. So he has to calm down. Why? I say at our conference, here's the question I want to ask you. When that man withdraws and stonewalls, is it an act of hostility or is it an act of honor? And I said, the answer is yes.
Both.
Just depends on whether you're videotaping in pink or videotaping in blue. And because the feminist movement has taken over the culture of intimacy and romance, men are wrong. But I've been campaigning to say, no, Jesus Christ said, have you not read, he who made them from the beginning made them male and female. But now back to the question of the light bulb moments. When I then help a wife realize he's trying to do the honorable thing, not the hostile thing, or when I help the man realize as a woman, she's going to feel very unloved when you do that, even though you're an honorable man. So both of you are going to have to try to meet each other halfway. And because you've got to trust the other's goodwill. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 7, 33 and 34, the husband is concerned about how to please his wife, and the wife is concerned about how to please her husband. Yet our feelings will tell us the opposite. The Word of God tells us this, and if I take this research and point out that you are interpreting it through your own masculinity or femininity, and he's not hostile towards you, he'd literally die for you, and Jesus Christ said, no greater love is a man than this, that he laid down his life for his friend, not write a poetic Hallmark card. If you come to that point where you realize, maybe I've been misinterpreting this, so I make this point that the light bulb is just a suddenly realization, just boom. And I even say this, you don't need more effort. You need more light. And if you get more light on these situations where we've become dogmatically conclusive, I know he hates me, or I know she's disrespecting me. I mean, on the other side, on that research, women criticize, complain. That's what they found in these love laboratories. And they knew that wasn't politically correct to make that a statement, but they said that's what's going on. They had linguists. This is criticism. This is complaint, and it is consistent. But I know from all the research on sociology, women are the caregivers. They confront because they care. They move toward the man. They're critical. They're negative. But from their standpoint, they care. They're feeling a little insecure about the relationship, feeling insecure about abandonment, but they care. And so they get aggressive and they come across as critical and complaining. And but every man you read, you ask, hey, what's going on? She's just using this topic as another opportunity to send me a message that she has nothing but disrespect for me. Now, that's what's going on. She has contempt for me. But I like to ask our conference this question. Is her criticism and complaint an act of care or is it an act of contempt?
What do they say?
It just depends on whether you're videotaping pink or blue. And once the man then can interpret it, well, she really cares even though it's never comfortable. She's not trying to dish you. There is this light bulb moment. So then at the conference, she comes to a point where we realize he doesn't hate me. He's trying to do the honorable thing. She doesn't have contempt for me. She's trying to do the caring thing. And if you're willing to believe each other's goodwill and make that decision based on the word of God, believing the holy word, not Hollywood, and you lock into this, there's a pivot almost that quickly. Now, Sarah and I
Hmm.
know this, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to apply this tomorrow, but there's this one moment of light bulb realization. There's a big yes, like it changes everything. Now you're going to have the minor irritations along that line, but it never returns to where it was, where people are saying, I made a mistake in marrying this person. There's regret for this. There's resentment. They're living as roommates. They're not friendly. I mean, that whole experience people have goes out the door. They no longer live that way, even though right now they don't like each other, but they're grinning as they say that to each other.
I mean, I'm just imagining, so many couples that I've seen, so many times where I've seen people arguing. I've seen people get into this like cycle where they can't get out of it. The patterns start to connect. They start to get in the same ruts, right? Like they were. And now they have to get out of it. I mean, I've seen myself get into it so many times, a certain tone, a certain idea, a certain look, whatever it is. And it's like, and I've had to like try to figure out how to see my wife's, even her tone, and try to figure out like how am I interpreting it as something that's disrespectful when maybe it's not disrespectful. Maybe she's doing something, she's trying to help. She's trying to in her own way. And we've had countless conversations about this. And it's like this back and forth sense of like, how do you help her? Like, how do we both help each other figure out, okay, I need to not be so sensitive in
Hmm.
how I'm interpreting disrespect, right? And then I need to be thinking about my tone and how I portray that. And then when I portray it, like she doesn't, right, the sense of feeling unloved is absolutely there if my tone shifts to a bad place, and so or to like negative, and I just see it. I see it play out so many times, and I've seen it. I could think in the moment and do every single moment, think through every single event within that, and see it clearly. Like this is how it goes, and yet in the moment, it's like you see red. And it's like, I I guess, if you do think about, like we all just want to have the sense that this other person is going to understand us and care for us at the deepest level and accept us at the deepest level and accept our vulnerabilities at the deepest level and not take advantage of that, which is a lot, it's a lot to ask of someone and then even trust. How do we even do we have to get past our own insecurities first? Is it just a process of always going back and forth? What do you think? What have you seen?
I mean, I think, first of all, the issue of self awareness. I think you are reflecting on these episodes. How do we interpret that? Why does this keep
Yes.
happening? And what's going on here? And so, this self reflection, self awareness, trying to get in tune with what's going on. And we appeal to the other person to not come across so disrespectfully, or she appeals to us to don't come across so harshly. But it's so difficult because we're not trying to be harsh. We're not even thinking. We talk to our buddies the same way. And she's not trying to be disrespectful. She will talk to her sister the same way. So there is a sense in which that's true. There's a great deal of truth to that. But there's also a sense in which wives need to understand that they will talk to their husbands in a way they don't talk to anybody else. And men need to realize they will talk to their wives in a way they don't talk to other people as well. And so we have to be honest about this dynamic. But one way forward, and this is where you can kind of appeal to the person, meet halfway, and it's simply when she comes across disrespectfully and said, if I said to Sarah many times, if I was like Jesus, bullets would bounce off me like candy. You know, I would not be affected by any of this. I would be running across lakes because I could walk on water. I wish I was
Exactly.
totally like Jesus and didn't feel disrespected or talked down to. In fact, I need a lover, not a mother. I've had a mother. I don't need another. I need
Mhm.
a lover. And, but so you've had this exchange. But one of the ways of moving forward is, honey, you're coming across to me in a way that feels disrespectful to me. I shouldn't perhaps feel that way because I know your heart. You're a caring person. You're motivated always out of virtue. I get that. But did I say or do something earlier that felt unloving to you and triggered the crazy cycle? Because you're negatively reacting in a way that feels disrespectful. So I want to own up to my part in the earlier element here. Did I come across in a way that felt unloving to you? Now, I say this because it takes courage to say that. Because first of all, we feel like we're being mistreated and they shouldn't do that. But now we're trying to somehow take ownership for something we think they did wrong, and we're willing to take the blame for that. But I believe again, 1 Corinthians 7:33 and 34, that she has goodwill, he has goodwill. And if you stay on message, did I come across unloving earlier that explains this negative reaction to me? And do I need to face that? And I challenge men to do that. I said, what's interesting, many of you men are willing to die for your wife, but you're not, you don't have enough courage to live with her. And I said, and it's true. And the men start laughing at our conference. I said, you would die for this woman. That
Yeah.
the other day, a woman, and I just couldn't stop laughing. The wife said, would you take a bullet for me? Would you take a bullet? He said, you woman, you know I'd take a bullet for you. There should be no debate about that. I'd take a bullet for you any day of the week. You know I'd take a bullet for you. But you and I need to admit something here, that the reason that we're getting shot at is because of you. But
That's
apart,
pretty good.
apart from that
I'm gonna have to
story,
use that one.
oh, it's the guy. I just couldn't stop laughing after I heard this good old boy say that. It was because of
Oh
you,
my
woman.
goodness.
They're shooting at us because you're lipping off these people and they don't like. But back to the point, with your own wife, and I say to any man listening, if you have the courage, and we are insecure, to your point, we're all insecure. We have to acknowledge that. We all have vulnerabilities. God didn't design a woman to be unloved. He didn't design a man to have contempt. King David had been worshiping Yahweh. He comes home to bless Michael and the family, and she despised him in her heart, and she showed contempt toward him. And he said, I will be more lightly esteemed. And that marriage ended. She was barren. That ended because of contempt. And so we have to then step back and realize men are vulnerable to that, just as Leah was vulnerable to the lack of love and others along that line. That isn't an excuse. It's just simply to describe what's going on. So as a man, I have to say to Sarah, did I come across unloving? And then listen. And I will tell you, if you want to affect the heart of a woman, ask that question and watch what she does. She'll either, if you were a non-Christian for many years, she'll say, are you drinking again? She'll think you're drunk. What book have you been? You know, are you? Is this a bet with some guy? You know, but given that you push through that shock, watch what happens, and you have to ask. Every man has, do I want that kind of power? Because you have power and you can manipulate her, but I don't think you'll have that as your goal. But watch what happens. And I say the same thing toward a woman. And I coach women. You've got to use his mother tongue. Men have a mother tongue of honor and respect. They listen to that. You say, I love you, I love you. He knows that. He knows you love him. You can't not love. You say, I love you 100 times to family. Love you, bye, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. That's why God doesn't command you to agape love. There's no commandment of a wife to agape love her husband in the marriage portions of Scripture, because he designed women to love. He's not going to command them to do something he created them to do. But if a woman says to her husband, hey, you just came across unlovingly to me, did I say or do something that felt disrespectful to you and dishonored you? Watch what happens. There is so much power, and every man who hears me say that says, if she said that to me, what would you do? My shoulders would droop. I'd look at her. And I say to women, do you want his spirit to soften and look at you, move toward you to connect? Absolutely. That's everything to me. Well, you're approaching it in the wrong way. You've got to do it this way. Well, I'll stop there. Am I making sense, Josh?
Absolutely. No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And, I think that I, for all of us, there's so much, there's so much that we have to learn about ourselves, like you're saying, learn about our spouses, learn about our nature, learn about what's going to make us like, kind of go off the rails. And the more self-aware we become, the better. And, I think a lot of it has to do, I think, with how we derive our value. I know that's one of the things you talk about, like where our value is derived from, where we get that value. And you make the point that our value is God given, not spouse driven.
Hmm.
Um, what, why did you start there? Why did you go there in your book? What does that mean? And why do you see this misplaced identity as one of the deepest problems of marriage?
Well, years ago when I wrote Love and Respect, came out in 2004, I started with the crazy cycle, which is the felt need, and it just draws. I'm known as the crazy cycle guy, and so it just resonated with anybody and everybody. I mean, people said what you said in 3 minutes about the crazy cycle represents everything I've experienced in my marriage for 40 years. So the crazy cycle, I started with the felt need. And then, well, that's the negative. Why do we negatively react to each other? And then, of course, I'm thinking based on this, the implication of the text. What's proactive, Lord? Well, His love motivates her respect. Her respect motivates His love. That has to be inferred from the text. I believe Paul's implying that. Why would God do this? He's not a cosmic killjoy. He wants us to motivate and influence and energize our spouse. They have a need that only we can meet. So the energizing cycle was second. And then we ended with the rewarded cycle. We do what we do as unto Jesus Christ, regardless of my spouse, because we do it as to the Lord, as to the Lord. That was the refrain constantly in Ephesians as well as in Colossians. He goes from the horizontal to the vertical. And I end then with doing this unto Christ. At our conference, I will call people forward, not to come together as husband and wife, but individually, that you're going to put a stake in the ground and do this unto Jesus Christ. And if we've got 1,800 there, 800 people would come forward. I mean, it was just an amazing thing over the years. People take this very seriously. And it was always very moving to me to see this desire to do this unto Christ. And this became one of those light bulb moments. I was doing a small event in Manhattan, and this gal had several degrees from Harvard. And I was going through the crazy cycle. It was an all-day event. And then I went through the energizing cycle. And then we wrapped up with the rewarded cycle. And afterwards, she came to me and she said, if you'd started your conference with where you ended it, I would have paid more attention. And I never forgot that. She said, if you'd started with us doing this unto Jesus Christ, then it
Hmm.
gives us an incentive why to get off the crazy cycle. It gives us an incentive as to why to get on the energizing cycle. So when I wrote the Lightbulb Moments, I thought, you know what? I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Christ. I'm going to start with the Lord. I believe that's where we need to start. Even Paul in Ephesians, submit to each other out of reverence for Jesus Christ. He starts right there in Ephesians 5:21. And I've had a lot of people. Moody Radio interviewed me, and they said, this guy that was interviewed said, I just love this. The very few books that he knows starts with that. So, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason in answer to your question other than the fact that that experience plus I really believe that what I'm going to be saying subsequently in the book, if you get your value as God-given, not spouse-driven, then it really sets the stage for everything. It certainly is true in my own marriage. And one of the points I make is Sarah refines me, but she doesn't define me. So I have to remain teachable. It doesn't mean that, well, because my identity is in Christ, because God loves me, then it doesn't make any difference, Sarah, what you think about me. That could be rooted in hubris. But um, many people are way, way too insecure, as you referenced earlier, and they don't have a sense of strong identity. And so when negativity surfaces in the relationship, it just triggers all those insecurities, and they panic and they do things that they know are unbecoming. And so one of the challenges I've extended to people, you're going to have to come to grips with this. Your marriage is impermanent. It's not permanent. You're going to be married you're the wife of the Lamb. The wedding feast,
Hmm.
marriage feast begins so we're married to Christ. And that is a very important truth. So that means that marriage is a tool and a test to deepen and demonstrate my love and my reverence for Jesus Christ. And that is the challenge I extend in the first part of the book, and talking about seeing Christ beyond the shoulder of my spouse. That
Yes. Yeah.
I
Could
don't
you go
do
into that
this
a little
just
bit? What do you mean by that?
well, Jesus Christ is present. And I gave that metaphor in a conference years ago. I said, Jesus Christ is standing beyond the shoulder of your spouse. And he's saying to Emerson and everybody, unto me, son, as unto me. I see Sarah's finger in your face. No, I see her holding up your love and respect book. And Emerson, look at me, son. Look at me, unto me. You love me, and let your love for me spill over onto Sarah's love for Sarah. I say in the conference, I'm called to love Jesus Christ. And periodically, Sarah walks in between Jesus and me. And my love for Christ should spill over onto Sarah's love for her. And I love to ask, I say, okay, church, if I'm not loving Sarah, what am I not doing? They'll all shout it out. You're not loving Christ. And they all get it. It's kind of like, boom, whoa. And wives are called to reverence Jesus Christ. And that reverence for Jesus Christ is to spill over onto her husband, not as reverence for him, but as respect for him. So if she is not respecting her husband, even if she's leading worship on Sunday, she's not reverencing Jesus Christ, because what goes on in the home is what the Lord watches, because it doesn't require talent. It's not based on spiritual giftedness. It's not based on charisma. It's based on character. That's why the Ephesians swings from doctrine 1, 2, and 3, those chapters. On chapter 4, it swings into husband-wife relationship. Colossians 1 and 2 is doctrine. 3 and 4 is application. Swings first and foremost husband-wife relationship. That's where the Lord is watching our application. And it is really it's given a lot of hope to a lot of people who felt hopeless, because they suddenly realize what they do matters, that what they are doing is touching the heart of Christ, and that's putting them in a position which chapter 3 talks about, eventually hearing, well done, good and faithful servant. And one of the first and foremost criteria he uses is how did you treat your spouse? Because even there, husband-wife relationship represents the very image of God according to Genesis. And the husband-wife relationship represents Christ in the church. Other than that, it's not a very significant thing, right? I mean, this is so huge, we can't even comprehend how important this is. It is so important to God, but we are so blinded to the significance of it that we suppress the truth of what's being clearly stated. And it's going to be here that he evaluates us and says, well done. So I've had men in horrible marriages. I mean, there are women out there that are Jezebel types, and the men just are in despair, but they suddenly hear this. Now everything they do matters. Everything they do counts. Nothing is wasted. Everything they do toward Jesus Christ, toward their wives in this case, matters. And I've had so many men say to me, it revolutionized my life. And I thought, boy, that's not necessarily a good thing, but I suddenly realized some people, they're just not going to divorce. They're going to stay in a bad marriage, but they really do have an element of emotional despair. And this just flipped them. The light bulb moment, it's kind of like they had a whole new lease on life. And I would not have predicted that, Josh, but I've heard it now so often that it's a real tribute to the depth of maturity that's out there in many men and women.
Yeah, I mean, that really makes sense, and I would love to dig in a little bit more to the marriage that with the eternal significant that acts of love and respect, right, are not going unrewarded. They're building something. Um where do we go with that? Explain that a little bit more. And then maybe how do you keep that from becoming overly performance driven? Or if you think that that's a potential risk there.
Yeah, I mean, I think our faith in Christ and the cross, salvation is a free gift. Heaven is a free gift. I mean, Paul, the great treatise on total depravity in Romans, it's a free gift. Eternal life is a free gift. When I learned that, God loved me and Christ died for me, but my sins separated me, but because of Christ's death, I could be forgiven. And that's why Paul says in Corinthians, we're blameless in his sight. We're saints by calling. There is therefore no condemnation. We all know that. So this is just and we are also co-heirs with Christ. Everything Jesus Christ inherits, we inherit. I've said to the Lord, this is just unbelievable that you would do this. You're the one that suffered. You took all the sin on yourself. He who knew no sin became sin on our behalf in order that we might become the righteousness of God in him. And you have this holy audacity to let me be a co-heir with you. It's just overwhelming to me. So the incredible gift that we've received. But then there is this add-on. It's kind of like he wants to say attaboy, attagirl, because there are rewards. Whatever good thing each one does, this he'll receive back from the Lord. And the International says, will be rewarded. Now, this isn't rewarded with heaven. This is once we're in heaven, the Lord says, I watched you love me, reverence me, trust me, obey me in your marriage. And I was very attentive to that because it represents the very image and character of the Father, and it represents my relationship with the Father and the church, and I want to reward you. Now, if that is going to create a performance mindset, I think it'll be short-lived. But I think there just isn't going to be. You can't perform just for the sake of performance. But if there is a recognition that we are going to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant," and we live with that statement in mind every day when this woman or this man fails to be what we expect them to be. And we're not talking about being in harm's way. My mother got out of harm's way. My dad attempted to strangle my mother when I was 2.5. I witnessed that. She left for
Goodness.
5 years with me and with my sister. So my frame of reference isn't being in harm's way. Everybody always says, "Well, what about abuse? What about abuse?" We all know about abuse. You don't need to be asking the question about abuse. We ask that a million times throughout the year. We all know if there is abuse, you separate, you get out of harm's way. We're talking about two good-willed people who are fallen, who fail. Their spirit's willing, but their flesh is weak, like the three disciples. There are these shortcomings they're just an imperfect person. We only had two people who were perfect, and they blew it. So we're talking about people with basic goodwill who are failing us, but we also have people who really maybe have some deep-seated issues, like this one man and his wife. And we encourage people to think about the fact that the Lord's watching, and he is going to say, "Atta boy, atta girl." He is going to reward you. Now, what that looks like, I'm in the fog on. I do know that there seems to be this, it says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful in a few things. I'm going to put you in charge of many things." So there's some charge, something, this something glorious is awaiting us, and we're going to find pleasure in doing it. And so it's coming, but we aren't clear on what really that looks like. I just say, let's just trust, but also believe that nothing is wasted and everything matters.
Like that perspective. I also like the idea, the chapter that the holy word, not Hollywood. And you even mentioned that before. What specifically do you think that modern couples have absorbed and observed from Hollywood, from the movies that distorts marriage probably the most deeply?
Well, I think if I was not a Christian, I'd be trying to write script for Hollywood because there's an idealism. Paradise remains within our souls, particularly with women, what we call the princess syndrome, the Eve. There's an idealism, and it's often rooted in goodness. And even as Eve wanted more of God, more of goodness, more of wisdom, but that's the deception. And so there is this idealism, wanting more, and we have to be guarded about that. And Hollywood is able to capture that very well, particularly romantic comedies and other kinds of things. And this is where I talk in the book about a good friend who was instrumental in leading 60 women to Christ. She was part of a parachurch organization. She'd led 60 women to Christ as a single woman herself. Later, she marries this man, and they were instrumental in 90 couples going into full-time ministry. But she went to see a Barbara Streisand movie, and this romantic comedy really affected her because her husband wasn't as romantic. She called off the wedding. Unfortunately, they married later, and you can see the fruits of that. But during that period, she called it off because of Hollywood. And someone came to her and said, "Are you into real love, R-E-A-L, real love, R-E-A-L, or are you into real love, R-E-E-L, R-E-E-L?" And there she had her light bulb moment. Bam! It just awakened her, and she realized what had just happened to her. But yeah, all of us have to recognize that what they're appealing to, there's a residual there that calls us out and says that's the way it ought to be. Same thing with the pornography industry or whatever. It's a fantasy that's not to be acted upon. You shouldn't be fantasizing about some husband that in all these romance novels, we've endorsed that in the Christian community, which is deeply troubling to me. We're just fantasizing
Sure.
about this man loving and then we compare our husband to that. What's the difference between it's soft porn because the same thing's kind of going on, but we see men as lustful, men love lust, women lust for love. And so we put a virtue on that. But apart from getting in trouble on what I'm saying, I'm trying to appeal to us to be very discerning what it is that's
Sure.
causing us to draw conclusions in our mind. And if we're listening to messages, we're listening to scripts out there that are not scripture, we're going to be contributing to our own undoing. And I often say, Satan doesn't play checkers, he plays chess. And he will take 30 years But if you're not aware of those seeds that are being planted, he will, in fact, say checkmate at some point, and you'll discredit yourself. You'll undermine your reputation, and you'll hurt the heart of Christ's, honor in your life. And we must not conclude that we're an exception to this. And this is the troubling point. The people who continue to do this almost predictably believe they're an exception to this, and we mustn't be so presumptuous.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. Like that when you start thinking you won't do it, that's like probably the time you need to be most afraid because you
Well,
will
Paul
do it.
says, "Take heed, he who
Right?
thinks he
Yeah.
stands, lest he fall."
Yes, you're gonna face a temptation if you think that you can actually face these temptations that you've been like tempted to the extreme that's possible. You haven't, right? Like there can be something that happens and you have to be careful not to be put into that situation, right? So that it is too much, right? You can't make that control, and that's part of wisdom, and that's a really
Mhm.
hard thing to work through, but we all have to kind of figure out how wisdom is going to be applied in our lives and the degree to which we allow any of this stuff to slip, right? We all want to be ideal, right? We all want to live to the ideal, and that's why we have to continue to be diligent about the circumstances that we put
Yeah, and
ourselves
I think
in.
the
And
challenge
yeah,
coming back to being men of honor in particular, I ask people at our conference, how many believe that Jesus Christ joined you together? Almost everybody raised their hand. How many of you believe that there was a sense of call on you as a couple? Raise their hands. I mean, Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 about marriage, 9 times he talks about called. So there's a sense of destiny, a sense of purpose, something that's bigger than us. And the question I like to ask men in particular, okay, you're involved in porn and you continue, I'm going to tell you, you're not the enemy. You're the victim of the enemy. And his one goal is to get you sidetracked from that call and that purpose that God has for you. And you know in your deepest heart, you got a sense of destiny. And you have to come to a crossroads where you make a choice. Do I want this destiny to be fulfilled in my life or not? Because you can't continue to go that way into the dark side and expect God to honor you on the other side. And if you're in ministry and you're doing this and you got the secret, it's just a matter of time before it'll be exposed. It will be exposed. Although Paul said the sins of some go before them, the sins of others follow, but it will be exposed now or later. And we all have an Achilles tendon, and we've got to be very discerning of what that is and not lie to ourselves about what that is. That's why take heed, he who thinks he stands, lest he fall. But the motivation to counter this isn't so much by saying no to something, it's by saying yes to that sense of call that he joined you together for a purpose. There's a destiny, and you want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And you've got to come to a point where you say, that's more important to me. That's more important to me. And you've got to do whatever you can to make sure that you get back on rail and pursue it. And the Lord will honor you. And it's not something that you need to be afraid of, because what I find often is once a person makes that decision, it's kind of like heaven just opens up. And it's like, wow, I should have done this years ago.
I love that. If a pastor wants to preach or teach this book, what would you most want them to emphasize? What would you most want them to clarify clearly as they're kind of walking through this and using it?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it's choose your own adventure. These 12, I say in the book, you can start wherever you want. I mean, some people, talk about, communication being the key. The book is revolved around 3 areas. The first is the upward, the faith component that we've already talked about. The second 4 chapters deals with the interpersonal, the marriage itself, clarity and harmonization, um, often, or the acknowledgement that neither one of us are wrong, or just different shades of right, which is a very important teaching. But then we conclude with the idea of the inward, the self-awareness, the emotional intelligence. So a pastor needs to kind of just reflect on those 3 major clusters and decide kind of where he'd like to land. We also have a video series and workbook with this that I am thrilled with. We've already done it. It's ready to go to out there. It's coming out. And I just would encourage them to have people go through this in small groups, because it's just, again, this idea, people need hope, and they're really trying a lot of times, and it just ends up they're feeling frustrated that nothing I do works with my spouse. And so they feel hopeless and helpless. And part of the message here is, you don't need more effort. You need a little bit more light. You're in this dark room and you think your spouse is miles away when they're just inches away, but you just can't see you're not going to see what you're not looking for. And so it's a matter of, I think, inspiring people. This doesn't mean this is pixie dust. It doesn't mean there is no commitment or energy necessary. But a lot of times people are working really hard. But if you don't understand these dynamics, like, is this an act of hostility or an act of honor? Is this an act of contempt or is this an act of care? That simple illustration should illuminate a lot of people with, if you don't figure that out, you're going to be on the crazy cycle for 3 decades.
Yeah, man, that is so good, man. I appreciate you coming and spending some time with me so much. Like, how can they get involved in what you're doing, and a preferred vendor for the book if you have one?
Yes, no, I mean, the book is available everywhere. The books are sold. Lightbulb Moments in Marriage, the 12 perspectives for successful and satisfied couples. And I had thousands of testimonies of people who said we had a light bulb moment. And I want people to hear this. It's just so encouraging. It's not just a conceptualization. These are people that are saying this is what happened to us, and I want them to have that hope. But also, we have a website called loveandrespect.com, loveandrespect.com. And we have a lot of free information there for them. I've had these video clips that have gone viral, several million views. And so we have our favorite viral, and I do a lot of humor, like,
Nice.
like, would you take a bullet for me? I love good humor. So hopefully people will be laughing. But that's where I'd like them to go and check it out if they would, loveandrespect.com.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Emerson. It was a real pleasure to have you on the program to talk with you, and I just can't wait for people to connect with what you're doing.
Thank you, Josh. God bless you and your work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, guys, please check it out. We'll have descriptions in the show notes, and we'll have all sorts of links there that you can check out the work. And make sure you go look at that, share this with somebody who needs it, with your pastor, with a friend, whatever you need to do. And take care of yourselves. And God bless. We'll see you next time.